Things like this are not going to result in muscle building, to be honest, because there is no resistance here. It's been a few days since the last video, and I'm going to be honest, it's still on my mind. It's been lingering since that video, and I can't escape it, I can't shake it. I can't stop thinking about the cheesecake. Like, I'm not even a massive cheesecake fan. It's just that cheesecake in particular changed my life, and I can't let go of it. I'm too emotionally attached and invested in that cheesecake. But fortunately, that's actually irrelevant to the video, because what we're doing today is we're covering another highly requested content creator and workout provider. I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, because I actually Googled how to pronounce this name. Many Google searches told me it's Pamela Reif. I believe she's German though, and that told me that it was Pamela Reif. So it's one of the two. I feel like it's Pamela Reif. And that's who we're covering today, because she has actually popped up a lot for a fair few months actually, but especially recently, and she has been on my list for a fair while. So I figured, you know what, we've done a few videos recently where we're kind of going a bit deeper into things, like talking about some deeper topics and maybe less about workouts in particular. I thought, you know, let's change it up, you know, let's bring it back a bit and let's go through some workout footage and some workout videos, and I can give my honest opinion and hopefully constructive criticism regarding what's a yay, what can maybe be improved, especially considering a recent comment I received asked me what my thoughts were on Pamela's recent workouts and whether they're good for building muscle. So we're gonna have a look at that as well. But before we do so, you know what must be done. 1,200 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal on this video, so if we could reach that, that would be bloody splendid. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel, and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. A good half of you watching this video haven't subscribed to the channel yet. And I know it's hard because you're thinking, Harry, you're a pale man on the YouTube. Why am I going to subscribe to you? You are right, I'm a pale man on the YouTube machine, but you should subscribe to me because I'm unable to fulfill my cheesecake dreams. That's why. Oh! Just sneezed. That bloody threw me for 6. If you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below in the comment section with comment question of the week and I shall do so. But now that's out of the way, we're going to do it. I have not seen all of Pamela's workouts. This is by no means a deep dive on her or an assessment of her as a creator. I'm merely looking at a couple of her recent workouts and I'm just going to give my honest input and opinion on them. I'm so pale, I'm blue. That's what life has come to. I am now blue. I look like a bloody Smurf. So this is obviously Pamela, you know Pamela. And this is her 8-minute full body with other people workout in which we look at cardio, legs and arms. No equipment. So this could be an interesting one, and I'm going to tell you why it's going to be an interesting one. It's interesting because of things like this. If we look at the description, it talks about how it combines cardio and full body bodyweight exercises. Cool, I respect that. Main muscles, legs, arms and brain. That being said, the brain is not a muscle, just want to clarify. So if you think it is not, unfortunately. Fun as warm-up, calorie burner or finisher to your workout day. This is very similar to what like Emmy Wong was promoting, these kind of fly variations and bodyweight movements that don't actually take you through a range of motion with sufficient resistance to really result in the building of muscle. So when you are doing bodyweight exercises, sure they can be effective, and someone did actually recently ask me that, what I thought about the effectiveness of bodyweight exercises. Sure, they can be, but again, it depends why you're doing them. If you're trying to build a little bit of muscle, absolutely they can be effective. If you're trying to build a mass amount of muscle, you're going to be limited to how far you can go. But they are still effective, don't get me wrong. Things like this are not going to result in muscle building, to be honest, because there is no resistance here. The shoulder press, sure, you're against some resistance here being gravity, but again, how do you progressively overload gravity? And despite what anyone says, progressive overload is a fundamental principle of gaining muscle. And then you look at the chest fly here, so when she's coming across with the arm. So I've spoken about this before, but the kind of primary function of the chest is to bring the humerus, so the upper arm bone, this one, across the body, which she is doing here. Absolutely, she's bringing the humerus across the body, and you're thinking, fantastic, Harry, surely that involves the chest. But there is no resistance here. Gravity is pulling her arm down, it's not pulling it that way. Ultimately, for it to be effective, the resistance needs to be resisting this movement. So pulling away from the chest as she's trying to come across the chest, rather than pulling down to the floor. For that, it is quite disappointing. Regardless of whether you add weight, the resistance is still going down. Its effectiveness is going to be very limited. That being said, adding weight to the shoulder press, the resistance is pulling her down, being gravity, and she's going against it. Add some weight to that, fantastic, progressive overload. That could be effective. The squat, again, you're going through a squat range of motion. In fairness, her depth is not bad. Things like this are going to burn, absolutely, because she's maintaining tension for a fair period of time. And what I mean by that is she's holding that kind of mid-squat position where her quads especially will be contracting to stop her from falling down, therefore will likely burn. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great for building muscle. Ultimately, for it to be more effective for building muscle, you need to lengthen the muscle and shorten the muscle. By lengthen the muscle, I mean going to the bottom of the squat, and by shorten, I mean contracting, so the top of the squat. So going through that sufficient range of motion against resistance and hopefully progressively overloading. And by that, I mean doing more and more each time. So an extra rep, maybe an extra set, maybe a bit of extra weight, something along those lines. I know she's kind of treating it as more like a calorie burner, but you also have to ask yourself, despite whether you're doing this at the start, mid, or end of your workout, how many calories do you realistically expect to burn in 8 minutes? A lot of people don't understand, and I didn't really think about it myself until Dr. Mike Israetel spoke about it on a podcast, how efficient the body is when it comes to calorie expenditure. So what I mean by that is you can run 3 miles, which is a fair distance. Like if I run 3 meters, I'm sweating. If I go down those stairs, I'm thinking, boys, time for a rest, I need some carbs, I need some sugar, I'm sweating. But you can run 3 miles and you probably won't burn as many calories as you think. And those calories could easily be leveled out so you can consume them again just by having a few Kit Kats. And I don't know about you, if I have a Kit Kat, sometimes I have 1, sometimes I have 12. Which is why I often preach that you don't necessarily need to do cardio if you want to reach your fat or weight loss goals. You can often do so by resistance training, getting your steps in, and eating in the calorie deficit. For a lot of people, that's actually going to be a pretty effective way of going about it and a pretty sustainable way of going about it. That being said, if you do want to do cardio and you do want to do these workouts for a bit of an extra top up, or maybe even merely for enjoyment, then sure, go for it. Absolutely. At the end of the day, if you enjoy it, then is that not reason enough to do something? And I respect that. But I'm just saying, when it comes to calorie burning and muscle building, the amount of muscle you're going to build from these workouts is going to be very limited, and the amount of calories you're going to burn from doing an 8-minute workout in general is also going to be very limited. So I think that kind of needs to be in the back of the mind for consideration, you know? Again, this technically wouldn't actually be considered a chest press. So a chest press would involve elbow extension, so the arm getting straighter. This, where the elbow is locked in position, would be considered a chest fly. So when there's no elbow extension, or minimal elbow extension, we'll say. I think the thing I'm most impressed by in this workout is the synchronization and the coordination. I'd be lost after the first movement. I'd be tripping over my toes, I'd be on my shoelaces, I'd probably be on the floor panting and puffing. I respect the timing and I respect the recall of movements. That's impressive. Would I deem this workout to be particularly effective for building muscle? Probably not, to be honest. I would do this workout not so much if you're looking to burn calories, not so much if you're looking to build muscle, but more if you're just looking for a bit of fun to end your workout with, something you enjoy and something you feel like you can stick to. Because at the end of the day, something is always better than nothing. And I'm sure many people will find these kind of workouts fun and enjoyable. And again, if that's what you want to do, then go for it. Some of the things to consider when building muscle is how far you can progressively overload a movement. And another thing is, are these movements actually taking you through a range of motion against sufficient resistance? Oh, go on, let's have a look at a 10-minute HIIT and standing abs workout. And we're going to touch on this for a reason. A combo of fat burning HIIT, so high intensity interval training, and standing ab movements. Let's have a gander, I'm curious to see what's going on. In fairness, a movement like this with resistance, so maybe a kettlebell in hand, would actually be quite a solid movement. So again, it's going through basic kind of movements like high knees, things like that. So things that get you moving quite a lot and quite quickly for relatively short periods of time, which will likely elevate your heart rate, get you sweating, get you feel like you're working a lot. She even states in the description that for most people, you'll probably burn between 70 and 110 calories in 10 minutes. Again, this kind of goes back onto my previous point. Think about how hard this workout may be for you, then also consider how many calories you actually manage to burn from it. It's probably not as many calories as you would hope for, understandably. The theme you'll find with this workout are things like this. You've got the waist crunches, where she's kind of doing a bit of a side bend with it. You've got the crunch plus cross right, where she's going across, ab twist, a lot of twisting based movements and a lot of side bending based movements. These kind of twisting based movements and these side bending based movements are going to be a bit more oblique dominant, and the obliques obviously the muscles to the side of the six pack and almost that V shape as well, you know, when you get the V at the bottom of the six pack. And I spoke about this in a video previously, but ultimately I think when you say abs, a lot of people think like the six pack muscle, that kind of region. The thing to consider, as I did state before, when you're looking to train your abs, so like the six pack, through a range of motion, you have to reduce the distance between your sternum and your pelvis, essentially. So when you see people doing movements like this, and you're thinking, Harry, the distance between her sternum and her pelvis is definitely decreasing slightly because she's obviously got a bit of a bend. The leg coming up is not changing the position of her pelvis. So if you look at her pelvis there, the pelvis itself is staying in one position. The leg is just elevating. So that's likely being controlled by the hip flexors as well as some other muscles. resistance. And then you're also thinking, but Harry, her sternum's getting a bit closer to her pelvis. Look, she crunches down with it like there. Sure, it is reducing the distance between her sternum and her pelvis, but what is reducing that distance? Is that her and her muscles doing that, or is gravity doing that? A way to make standing movements more effective is to add resistance. And obviously you're thinking, Harry, you can't add a weight to that because that's just going with gravity. It's not going against gravity. Absolutely, you're right. But what you can do is maybe hang a band from something and use that band as resistance. Or if you were at the gym, maybe you had access to a cable machine. The cable's going to give you resistance, so you're going to pull it down. Without adding resistance, this isn't actually doing anything for your abdominal region, really. It is merely gravity just taking you down there. That's why things like leg raises aren't particularly effective for that kind of six-pack ab region, because again, the distance between your sternum and your pelvis doesn't really change. It's more so your hip flexors raising the legs, essentially. So things like ab twists are actually really good, provided there is additional resistance. So maybe if you had a cable machine or even a band, again, you could do things like ab twists, which will also be called wood choppers, Russian twists, whatever you want to call them. Adding a bit of resistance where you're twisting against it. Really solid stuff for the obliques. And the thing I'm noticing throughout these couple of workouts I've seen is that some of the movements, the actual movement itself is a good movement, but what's hindering it is the lack of resistance and also lack of ability to progressively overload. But just remember, when it comes to burning calories, how many calories are you realistically going to burn in 10 minutes? Pamela reckons about 70 to 110, which I don't think is wildly inaccurate. I think that's probably a fair range. It's quite a broad range, but it's probably a fair one. And how much muscle do you have the potential to build doing movements like this? Again, the potential to build muscle is mainly limited by the lack of resistance, therefore lack of ability to progressively overload, and also some of the movement selection. As a whole, kind of in conclusion, do I think the workouts I've seen are particularly effective for building muscle? In honesty, I'm going to say no. Do I think they're particularly effective for burning calories? Again, a similar sort of answer, probably not, but that's mainly because how many calories do you realistically expect to burn within 8 to 10 minutes? Again, I will acknowledge, I will appreciate that something is better than nothing, and especially if you're starting out, maybe this is your first time getting into working out. I think ultimately, if you had resistance, so like dumbbells and bands maybe, it's not a bad starting point. And I acknowledge that essentially if you've done nothing and you're doing something, that's a huge win, and that's something to be very proud of. Just know that if you're looking at long-term goals and you want to maybe lose weight, maybe gain a bit of muscle, things like that, regardless of how much muscle you want to build, resistance training is wildly overlooked and can be extremely beneficial for not only the building of muscle, be that some or a lot, but also fat loss and the maintenance of fat loss, so keeping that fat off. The more muscle you have, the more calories you burn at rest. So like, I always kind of saw it like a car. If you have a 1 litre car and a 6 litre car, and they both travel 100 miles, the 6 litre car is going to burn more fuel. The distance is the same, but the bigger engine means it has to output more energy to travel that same distance. The engine are your muscles. So if you add more muscle, you're going to burn more calories doing nothing, or more calories doing something, in comparison to if you had less muscle. Don't be afraid to lift weights. Honestly, I'm telling you this now, and it's not coming from a gym bro perspective. This is coming from the perspective of somebody who understands that everybody has different goals, and that not everybody wants to build mass amounts of muscle. I completely respect and appreciate that. Even if your goals are fat loss and that is your primary goal, resistance training is far better than you might think for that. Hopefully you managed to take something away from this video. Am I saying Pamela is a bad content creator? Absolutely not. At the end of the day, she gets people moving and working, and a lot of those people may well be beginners. I think that's fantastic. Again, this is only based on the limited number of workouts I have seen. I have no doubt some of our other content may be better for muscle building, who knows, but I can obviously do a deep dive in the future if you would like me to. As always, these are merely my opinions, and you don't have to agree with them. In fact, you may disagree with them, and that's absolutely fine. But now we must crack on with comment question of the week, and it's a good one. I did some overhead squats the other day, and I did a max rep at 60 kilos. I was thinking about what you say sometimes, if I got it right, that if a movement variation means you have to lower the weight, it's not worth doing. I really like working on overhead squats because they help me snatch better, though I have to significantly drop the weight compared to working on, say, back squats. What are your thoughts on that? The big thing to think about there is purpose. That's like in the realm of optimizing hypertrophy, so the building of muscle. What you're talking about here is more optimizing a movement. So if your purpose of doing the overhead squat is to improve your snatch, absolutely, 100%, I fully back it. I think overhead squats is a fantastic movement for improving your snatch. If you would say, Harry, my goal is hypertrophy, so building muscle, what's better, a back squat or an overhead squat? I'd always say a back squat, because obviously same range of motion, similar movement pattern, less variables to consider that may result in failure, like the shoulders, etc, etc, but you can lift more weight and likely have the potential to lift more weight in the long run. Therefore, obviously the squat will be better. But your goal here isn't hypertrophy. Your goal here is doing the snatch, so Olympic weightlifting, I would assume, or maybe CrossFit, something along those lines. If it's a movement to help another movement, and that that movement, being the overhead squat, helps your snatch, then yeah, 100% great movement, go for it. So like I say, it's the difference between the purpose. So what are you trying to achieve? What is the goal? Hypertrophy and the improvement of specific movements like the snatch are very different goals. So hopefully that helps clear things up. Oh, I forgot the bloody sunglasses. I'll do it now. Please forgive me. It's actually really nice because this screen isn't blinding my eyes anymore. It's basically Valentine's Day. 2 weeks early, crazy. 1,200 likes in the first 24 hours is the goal. So if we could reach that, that'd be bloody splendid. I would really appreciate it. If you learned something from this video, maybe even just took something away from it in general, please do consider clicking the red button down below and subscribing to the channel, and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you two have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, drop it down below for comment question of the week and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my awful memory. Please forgive me for that. And thank you for tolerating the video.